Welcome back to Coordinating Clinical Trials. My name is Steve Pope, and I'm your instructor. In this lesson, we're going to be discussing investigational product accountability, or IP accountability. So if we look at our purpose, this comes from ICH E6R2, section 4.6.1, responsibility for investigational product accountability at the trial site rests with the investigator. So the investigator is going to be responsible for everything that happens related to IP accountability at your site. And you're going to have a role in this as well as the coordinator. IP accountability is a principal task for each site and one that's required to be reviewed and verified by monitors when they come out on their monitoring visit. They will normally do this at each visit. So it's very important that you keep up with this because sponsors are very eager to make sure that they have all IP accounted for. So as the coordinator, you're going to need to be familiar with the processes at your site for how you do IP accountability. Some of you are going to work at sites where you have a separate pharmacy, and they're going to handle the accountability tasks, but you still need to be familiar with them. Many of you are going to be working at smaller sites where you or someone with whom you work is going to be doing this, so you need to be familiar. So every person, every staff member needs to be trained on how to receive, store, dispense, and destroy IP product and perform the required IP accountability tasks. I'll go over these as we go through the lesson. So let's look at our learning objectives. We're going to discuss the importance of IP accountability. We're going to cite the IP lifecycle. We'll discuss the Interactive Web Response System, or the IWRS system as it's known. And then we're going to describe the PI and site accountability requirements, so things that you're going to be required to do for IP accountability at your site. So let's talk about the importance of IP accountability. So when you get your investigational product at your site, so each kit and dose of IP must be accounted for in the trial. So you're going to need to understand how your IP is packaged. It may come in a bottle, it may come in a box, it may come in a blister pack. It could come a number of different ways. It might be an oral solution that's in a bottle. So you need to understand how you're going to get that and how it's going to be dosed to your patient. So the responsibility of the PI is to delegate IP accountability tasks to qualified and trained staff members. Now, if you work at a site where they have a pharmacy, an investigational drug pharmacy, specifically, not a retail pharmacy where patients go and pick up their drugs. This would be specifically an investigational product pharmacy. Those people will be familiar with all of these IP accountability tasks. So the PI is responsible for training the staff on the proper IP storage requirements. It might be that IP needs to be refrigerated, or even in some cases it's frozen. In many cases, it may be just shelf stable, so it's stored at room temperature. At any rate, you will need to make sure that you have temperature logs that record the temperature every day to make sure that the temperature does not go out of range. So that's something that's important. Some sites will have temperature monitoring equipment that does that for you, and you can just print out the log for your monitor when they come. Or you might have a written log where someone records that each day. Either way, it's got to be maintained on a daily basis. Then the PI is going to train staff for how to dispense the IP per the protocol. So that may be nothing more than handing the bottle to the subject for them to take with them. They're probably going to take it home, and then they'll bring it back. Or it could be dispensed in some other method. And then finally, you're going to train staff on how to instruct the subjects to use, store, and apply the IP supplies, and to check in with subjects during the trial to make sure they're dosing as they're required to do. So let's talk about the IP life cycle. The following schematic is going to explain how this works and hopefully give you a nice visual so you can understand this IP life cycle. So as you can see, as you move from the upper left corner through this schematic, you've got the sponsor who's going to manufacture the IP and is going to ensure that quality control mechanisms are in place. They're going to complete the packaging of the IP, and then they're going to ship it to a depot. So a depot is going to be a separate company that they've contracted with to handle the disbursement of the IP for their trial. So it comes into a type of warehouse facility at the depot. So they're going to store the drug until it's ready to ship to the site, and they're going to use the IWRS system as their means of shipping the or at least indicating what items should be shipped to the site. So once they ship it out to the site's going to be notified that a shipment is on the way. They'll probably get an automated email out of the IWRS system that the depot company has made that shipment available and that it's on its way. So then once it shows up at the site, they go through their procedures for how to receive it. So they're going to account for each kit or dose once they get it. Then they're going to track the dispensing of it to patients, and they're going to complete the accountability of each dose of IP as it's dispensed to each subject. And then they're going to track the subject assignments and visit dates within the IWRS system. So once the drug shows up in a shipment in a box at their site, they're going to make sure that the contents of the box match the packing list, and then they're going to check it in the IWRS system to indicate that it's received. In some cases, they might get the IP, and something may have occurred. It may have been damaged or something like that during shipment, and so that needs to be indicated in the IWRS system as well. Normally, when it's sent out, the depot is going to place a little temperature monitoring device called a temp tail in the box with the IP, and it's going to record the temperature in transit. So if you receive the IP and the temp tail indicates that there's been a temperature excursion, you're going to need to quarantine that shipment until the sponsor tells you that it's safe to use it or gives you other instructions to either destroy it or ship it back to them based on whatever the nature of that temperature excursion is. And then finally, during the monitoring visits that your CRA or your monitor does, they're going to come in and they're going to verify that the accountability of each dose was conducted. And normally, in many cases, any used drug, they're going to prepare and ship that back to the depot. Now, in some cases, the sponsor may allow you to destroy the investigational product on site. If you have the capability to do that, that's great. Then you can destroy it and you can provide a certificate of destruction to the monitor when they come out for their visit, and then they'll collect that rather than ship the IP back to the sponsor. So let's talk about the Interactive Web Response System, or the IWRS system, which you're going to become very familiar with. So these are going to be websites where you go in there, the application, and you'll have access to it. So you'll begin by entering the patient information in the IWRS system. This is going to be for all screened and randomized subjects. It also includes any screen failed subjects as well. So that's where you would start. So you would start by populating some basic demographic information, such as the date of birth, probably the gender of your subject. That's how it's going to track it. So then once you do that and the subject comes in for their visit, then they're probably going, their screening visit that is, they're probably going to come back for a randomization visit, and you're going to go back into the IWRS system and indicate that the subject has been randomized. So now you've deemed them to be eligible for the trial, and they're going to come back for their randomization visit. At that point, the IWRS system is going to assign that subject to a treatment arm. So you may have maybe two different treatment arms. So one might be a placebo arm, one might be the subject, or the subject is getting the actual IP. So at that point, it's going to tell you which IP shipment, which codes, or excuse me, which kit numbers to dispense to the subject when they come back in for their dispensing visit. So all the inventory and all the accountability is stored for IP, that is stored in the IWRS system. So it's going to assign IP kit IDs to individual subjects, and then you're going to record that on your IP accountability log, which you're going to use to track your accountability. All of these tasks are in conjunction with the pharmacy manual. So however it indicates the IP is to be managed. So during the study startup period, a lot of work goes into this so that it's going to function correctly when the time comes to start screening and randomizing subjects. The IWRS system may feed directly into your EDC system some basic information, which is usually demographic information, and also what the subject number is and what the randomization number is, which in most cases is going to be the same number. So that's how you're going to identify the subjects in the system. So as I said, you're going to use, or somebody at the site, a team member, is going to use the IWRS system to register in all received IP shipments. So you might get a shipment that maybe contains 30 kits or 40 kits, whatever the allocation is for your site. They're going to register that in the IWRS system, and then the sponsor is going to get notified that the IP has been received, been acknowledged in IWRS. So then you'll enter the screen subjects, the demographic data, and then whatever the first screen visit date is, it should automatically populate the additional dates, or additional visits, that is, once you enter that. So you're going to receive kit IDs to dispense to the subjects. So it's going to be stored, and then when the subject comes in, the IWRS system will tell you which kit ID to dispense to the subject. So you'll just go pick that from your inventory and give it to the subject. It's also going to keep track of any damaged IP kits and all returned IP kits. You may have situations where the subjects lose them. So maybe they have a kit that has 30 doses in it and they're supposed to come back for their next visit, say at day 28, but somewhere along the way they lost the kit, they lost the IP, so they failed to return it. So that would be what's called a protocol deviation. So you'd want to make note of that, and you want to retrain the subject that they're to return all unused or damaged IP IP kits. You would also use the IWRS system to order additional kits as well as supplies that you might need, such as lab supplies. In most cases, there's going to be an automatic dispensing mechanism within the system so that when your inventory reaches a certain level, it's going to automatically trigger an additional shipment of IP out to your site. But there could be it could be set up in a way where you have to manually go in and do that. Either way, it's going to happen. So let's describe the PI and site accountability requirements. First of all, it's very important to keep the IWRS system up to date and accurate. You don't want to fall behind on that. If you do, somebody from the sponsor of the CRO is going to be in contact with you to complete those accountability tasks. You want to ensure and document the proper IP storage and safeguards. That means keeping a temperature log. It also means that your IP needs to be stored in some type of restricted access manner. Either it needs to be kept in a locked cabinet or room at your site where only members of the study staff have access to it. That would be a good way of safeguarding it. You're also going to record the IP dispensing and return information on the IP accountability logs. That's something you need to do each time your subjects come back in. And then you're going to ensure accountability for each IP dose. So you know whether or not the patient took it, or did they not take it? Was it lost? Was it damaged? What happened to it? So this is an example of an investigational product accountability log. So as you see up at the top, you've got the name of the principal investigator, what your site number is, site address, and then the protocol number is listed on there. And then you would do that for each page of the log, because once you start dispensing and screening more subjects, you're going to have more pages to this log. So let's take a look at it. If you begin in the column to the left, the very left column, you'll indicate the IP information, the bottle ID. So that's going to be a code that specifically identifies that individual bottle. The next column shows what the IP expiration date is. Normally that's going to be a date probably no longer than 1 year from the day you receive it. You're going to have a quantity received. You're going to put that in there along with the initials of the person that received it. So in the fourth column there, now you see the subject identifier. So let's say you have bottle number 1, and that was dispensed to subject number 1. Then you write that in there. You write the date that it was dispensed, the quantity that was dispensed. So if it's a bottle with, say, 30 pills, you would probably put 1 in that quantity dispensed column. Then it was dispensed by whom. The person would initial that and date it for when they dispensed it. Then when the subject comes back, they're going to bring back that bottle. Even if it's empty, tell them to bring it back, because you need to account for it. So you write down the date it was returned, the quantity that was returned. If it had If it started out with 30 pills and it was returned with 2 pills, you would put that, you would include that in that column. And then who recorded the return receipt. And then finally, when your monitor comes in, they're going to review this log, and then they're going to send that used IP back to the sponsor. So they're going to record the date that it was returned back to the sponsor. They're going to indicate the initials of the person that returned it, and they're going to put that in that final column there along with the date. So this would be an example of a pretty typical IP accountability log. You just want to make sure you account for each item along the way. And this is going to be kind of a living document because it's going to take a while to get all of those columns populated in the log. So these are the reading assignments that you've got for this lesson. They're going to amplify what I've gone over in this lesson. So you've got the chapter from your textbook, chapter 11, Investigational Product Accountability. You've also got a couple of other articles there that describe issues related to the management of IP that I'd like for you to take a look at and be familiar with. And then finally, for your discussion forum for this lesson, I've included an Excel spreadsheet, which is the IWRS report for Dr. Doe, your PI. That spreadsheet is on Blackboard. And then you're also going to have an investigational product accountability log that looks just like the log that we just went over. So that would be what you fill out at the site. So what I want you to do is to compare the two and determine if there are any discrepancies that you find and identify them, and then post in the discussion board what you found. In addition to that, I also want you to respond to the following question. Why do you think IP accountability in clinical trials is important? So whatever reason you come up with, just indicate it in there. Just write a couple of sentences. You don't need to write a term paper. Just probably fewer than 100, 150 words would be fine. And then I want you to post that in the discussion forum on Blackboard.